weird.
Just different definitions of weird, I guess.
I worked on it. When it was done, I got to play. I'm like, that's weird.
So weird.
Still weird. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm Ariel Gross. I am an audio director and audio designer. I think the most well-known game I worked on would probably be Mass Effect, I guess. Andromeda, the new one. I guess that's probably the most popular. I don't really know. I have a few. And the weirdest one was probably Saints Row 4. Because it's just an extremely weird game. There's a lot of strange sounds to make.
I'm still thinking about the weirdest one.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Start with your name.
Because I have a lot of That's a weird one. My name. So my name is Eric Lorenz. I'm a sound designer at Wabi Sabi Sound. And definitely the most well-known game that I've put my hands on would be Destiny 2. Worked on those little dog creatures that are really annoying, and everyone always tells me that, so I feel happy about that. And the weirdest game, I'm gonna have to say it's probably The Witness. There's not too many like oh, that was a really odd game, like why did we work on that? But like Witness was cool, and it was also just a weird game. It's very cerebral. If you haven't played it, play it. My shameless plug.
It's a great game.
Take a poll on this. Who's played The Witness? Who's finished The Witness? Who's finished The Witness?
I haven't even finished it. I worked on it. I didn't.
It is really weird if you finish it. So if you have finished it, you know what I'm talking about.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah. It's really weird.
Without looking stuff up?
I did it without looking stuff up.
Really? Wow.
Wow.
Smart guy.
My iPhone to take pictures of the puzzles and then work on
Yeah.
So I'm Matt Piersall. I'm a sound designer at Gleek in Austin. And I think I'm going to go toss up for the most famous games. Guitar Hero is probably one pretty popular. Maybe you've heard of it. Such a dick move. And I think Modern Warfare, the Call of Duty, I did some cutscene stuff for them. For the last one, was it Advanced? Anyway, whatever.
Modern Warfare 3 or something?
Yeah. It was like one, I don't know, it's dudes with guns and they shoot stuff.
Robots? Were there robots?
There was robots.
Okay.
There were
Advanced
robots.
Warfare?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Infinity War.
Infinity?
It came out 2 years ago.
Infinite War.
Yeah, whatever. I worked on that. I've done a lot since then, so my brain's not quite there. Weirdest. It's like that could mean so many things. Okay, I'm gonna go. Ooh, I worked on a game called Cook or Be Cooked. It was for the Wii, and it's a Food Network game. They were like, "Hey, we got to get in on this game thing. Let's get a Wii development kit." And so I did sound and music for. It was literally like, "All right, make the potatoes," and it'd be like, "Shh, shh, 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 shh," and then you would like throw it in the pan and have to like open the. It was really dumb. And I'm just gonna call it. It was dumb. Another weird one was.
One up my cooking game.
No, it's not a one up. It's just like cooking games are weird. I also worked on this controller game. So there was a company called Jack's Pacific, and they would basically put a game on like a tiny little cartridge, and you would buy the controller and plug the controller into your TV, and like that was your jam. And it was a game for it was like an X-Men game, and it was like, hey, 10 levels, and we bought it for like $8, and I had to fit all my sounds in I think about 300K. So there's a lot of detailed work there. Yeah, a lot of downsampling.
Cool.
That was a weird one. Yeah.
You remind me of one I did for you guys, which was Let's Play Lumberjacks.
Oh, forgot about that.
For the Wii.
Wow. That's my weirdest one.
That was
Let's play Lumberjacks.
Yeah, no, it was like I swear to God, the pitch was like, hey, you know how every kid wants to be a lumberjack? What? So it's like literally like, you're sawing and you're climbing trees and you're getting the wood and bringing it back to the camp. Anyway, whatever.
It's a Canadian
Weird.
game.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's us. We're weird and famous. So let's open the floor up to your questions and get serious.
Who are some of your game audio items?
It's tough.
Chris Rickwood?
Matt Piersall.
Me.
I was gonna wait like 5 more seconds and then say your name. I want to include
I
everybody.
got one. Martin Stig Anderson.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, Martin Stig Anderson was the first person that whenever I played Limbo, I was like, oh wait, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, this is.
I would say I look up to him as well.
Yeah, this is very good.
I like Rob Blake. He did the Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare game. Some of the most hilarious and fun music and sound. It was really, really good. Amazing mix. Everything he's ever worked on has been pretty amazing.
If anyone knows Damien Kaspauer.
Yes. Absolutely.
Not only just an amazing sound designer, but one of the greatest people I have ever met in my entire
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great hang.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever hang out with, if you ever go to GDC and hang out with the audio people, we call like his entity the Damien Katamari, because wherever he goes, everyone kind of just like goes with. Not because we want to like stick with him, but like wherever he is, that's where the party is.
That's where the party is.
Yeah, that's where you want to be.
Totally.
I got into games because of the LucasArts games. So those guys that were music back, like the Michael Land and Peter McConnell and Cliff Jackie, and were like, oh, you guys are doing it.
Yeah.
Like composing music, like for orchestras. It was crazy. This was the '90s when not many people were doing that. Cool. Good question. Yeah.
So we were talking about this last night, the portfolio review. How do you do that with audio?
We actually used to do that, and they do it at the
Demo derby.
GDC. They'll do a demo derby where people will sign up for like 2-minute spots, and you go up, you play your demo for a panel, and then we critique it. We tell you what's good and bad about it.
And how would you, like, just have it on a website somewhere and bring the website up, or like SoundCloud or something like that, or?
That probably nowadays you did. Back
Yeah.
when it started, when I was doing it, it was like CDs.
Yeah.
That they were bringing
How
in.
would you do this, Jamie?
You would literally get in line, and it was first come, first served. You start out the door. But I think there's so many of them now that they make you sign up.
If you'd like to see a game audio portfolio review, then you should go to Power Up Audio has a show called Real Talk, and it's like 100 hours of audio review. It's really cool. So basically, you just like listen. So many of the demos are sound replacements where they take a video, they strip the sound out, and they put their own sounds in. And so you watch the video and then you critique it, with whatever sensibility you have. Yeah, it's cool.
And a lot of the time, whenever people are trying to get into like audio, they'll still do like just linear media, like just linear sound design for things, because sometimes it's not like, oh, how good are you at implementing these sounds into the game, or like, can you make up these systems? It's kind of like, well, like how good is your ear and how good is your like design chops? So I mean, you can do that in just a linear format, and it still works.
I have like a ratio that I like to see, because I find that a lot of the demos that I receive are like, how do I get in kind of questions. Usually, like the biggest issue is the length of the demo. So I had a guy send me a demo and it had like links to like literally like 50 different tracks on SoundCloud. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go through all those. There's so much content to go through. So, if somebody's like a composer or like a sound effects designer, I like to see like 1 minute linear, 1 minute in game, because if you want to do game audio, you should, in my opinion, the very least you can do is like download the Limbo Wise thing and just replace the sounds. At least you get a feel for the workflow. And then if you do music, see music at the back end. But it's all a 3-minute video essentially, but broken up into like, that's precise. I like that much better. That's just me.
I think I agree. Also, I would say that like, just like game audio in general, even demos are getting super competitive. So
Yeah.
at this point, like, I would not have survived today. Like, me back when I was getting in, the talent and sort of initiative and that you're seeing in demos today are, like, ridiculously good. And it's great. It's a good problem for us to have as people who maybe hire people or whatever, but the timing thing is brought up a lot. And
Yeah.
also, I would say the choices that you're making, because there's so many game devs out there that I was talking to someone about this yesterday, but it's like you want to have an idea of what you want to become or like where you'd want to work, and then really cater your demo to that.
Absolutely.
Because if you go to Naughty Dog and you're like, here's my demo, and it's like a puzzle game or something like that, then it doesn't really apply, and they might still see something in it, but ultimately you have to have like lots of demos, and a lot of people out there today do, which is really impressive.
The other thing, I know we're just getting off on a tangent here, but this is something that's like near and dear to me. It's the multidisciplinarian. Like that actually, when you're pitching a demo, is a bad thing. You know, like Ariel saying. Like, I've seen demos that are like, I'm a voiceover artist, and, like, I tap dance, and I'm a triple threat because I can also sing. And I'm like, I just want a tap dancer, currently. You know what I mean? And I want to see the best fucking tap dance thing that I've ever seen in my life. And once you can show me that, you can tap right on into my heart.
Pirouette. Yeah, that was bravo.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
have to use that analogy for
What
the
do you
rest of the
think of
panel.
this?
I think
Is that what your dad used to say?
Yeah, my dad used to say that. Tap right on into my heart.
and we're done here. I know we can beat that.
Yeah, it's not-
Yeah, you need to specialize and just do two things maybe. Don't. I've heard demos. It's just all over, an hour long. Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people like him who go to GDC, they have to come back with bags of demos. It's horrible. You know? I actually don't bring a demo. Just exchange business cards. Then
good
weeks
advice.
later, afterwards, then you can follow up. You know, attach a few MP3s, maybe 3 at the most, so they could click and play right away. And that's what I did. That's how I tapped in when I worked on Transformers. I knew those guys were working on something with cars. I didn't know it was Transformers. I said, hey, here is a sound of a Porsche. I got to record it. They played it, and they told me later. They played it, and they were looking at what they were working on with temp sounds. And they were like, that sounds better in here. And the audio tech said, no, don't do that. That's his sound. He will sue you. I'm not going to sue anybody. No, don't give me that mad. But you got to specialize. It's all about timing. You know, no means not right now, not today, not this week. But if they say no, ask, can I ping you again next quarter, next month? And maybe they need a tap dancer later. Things like that.
Always kind of.
So yeah, you when you know what they're working on. It's got horses. Okay, let's send some horse sounds, just in case. Coconuts, whatever. So you do that. And when you do that once every quarter, you're not bugging them. So you specialize. Do something you're good at, what you like. Somebody asked me a long time ago, hey, we're working on a Barbie horseback riding game, and I turn it down. I just don't do that. It's got no cars, no weapons.
No explosions.
No explosions.
Voice blow up.
Somebody asked me a while ago, can you do country music? No, I don't do that. I like hard rock, electronica, orchestral. That's it. I'm kind of limited. So you specialize.
I did the country for the Let's Go.
Yeah, see, call Rickwood.
Yeah, good question.
Your style is cash. My style of music's
Green.
cash, baby.
One microphone for those who are live.
That's wrong. I'm a junkie. I can't have one.
Come on, Watson. One.
See, it's only one. I can't do that.
I like the Sennheiser MKH series.
Me too.
That's probably my favorite.
Yeah, 80, 60
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I won.
We get one.
We get one.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be recording if I lived on a desert island, but maybe. Yeah.
I'll tell you something actually is that I'm super not knowledgeable of hardware. So whenever I need to know like what tool I should use for something, I go to people like Watson, and I say, hey, I'm gonna do this. What do I do? And by the way, that's okay,
Yeah.
Like so like when I record like field recordings, I have like an H6 and some crappy. Well, it's not crappy, but it was like a $100 condenser. Yeah, well, it's not quite this, but I mean it's just a cheap mic, And then I do as best I can with that. And if I can't achieve what I need to achieve with that little rig, because I'm used to it, it's just easy for me. And plus, like a lot of times, that's like all about speed because I'm the only dude at my work, so I've got to I don't have a lot of time to do it. But I know the right people that will know the answer to that question, and so I have. If you don't, I guess what I'm getting at is like not everyone's gonna have the full understanding of say hardware, for example. That's just not my strong suit. It's actually kind of like what Watson was saying. It's not really where I shine, and I've sort of accepted that. But what I do have is the people that I need to know to be able to ask questions like that. He's gonna bust out the mic right now.
That's how much of our favorite it is.
I want to hug it.
Goes everywhere.
I touched it. He almost like slapped my hand away.
I was not going to answer that question, but I'll have to. Inside here, it's a Pearl brand mic, and it's awesome. It's awesome. It's passed every test, And the last test was next to a rifle, and it passed. So it's an MS mid-side mic, so you could do very focus in the figure 8 side mic. Then you could do direct as well as almost like a fake surround, a wide stereo and narrow stereo. So if I have one, it just be that one, for example.
Cool. How about you, Rickwood?
My favorite mic is Watson.
Yeah, I'm telling you. See, he's like me.
I seriously I mean, you know this, but I will record with my iPhone if I have to.
Yeah, totally.
Just
Yep.
get the sound, and I can make that work. And for me, that's more important than the hardware you put on it. Until it gets down to where things need to sound realistic, and that's when I turn to professionals that care about that stuff. Because I really don't, and I feel bad about saying that in this room.
I'm
audio professionals,
I'm
but
with you.
mics don't excite me. Like synths and
Yeah.
instruments, and I'll buy
Yeah, I love that.
every instrument I can.
There's also like a lot of effort in going to like specific types of records. Like you got to find the car. Or like I recorded Electricity a long time ago at this thing called it was like Tesla Fest. So I'm like, Tesla Fest. I'm thinking, okay, it's like a hip vibe over here, like people Tesla coils. Maybe they'll have a cookout. And it was like this weird house. It had kind of a culty vibe. And they were literally watching a video of a huge Tesla coil, and somebody goes, "Oh man, look at that puppy pumping out the voltage." And I'm just like, I don't know if I want to kick it with you guys all day. Like, this is just a little creepy. You're all into electricity, and I got some great sounds, but I wish I could say I made some friends. I didn't.
You know what I'd add too is I feel like really good Foley recording artists are almost akin to like composers, where it's like when you're working in house at a game dev, you see fewer. I've seen fewer. This is just my experience, but I've seen fewer people that are really dedicated to like Foley recording. But instead, they tend to be more like freelancers, and they specialize really super deep in it. And it's like it's funny, like maybe people who are less experienced will often assume that like a lot of your job working in house at a game dev is like recording. But and then there's also a little bit of a shame on libraries. But that's like what we do. I mean, it's like Watson's gonna make a badass library. I can't do that. Like
Totally.
it would take me forever. It's a whole lifelong journey to do that sort of get that expertise. So I see them kind of like a little bit like composers, same thing. It's like, yeah, I can compose. I like to as a hobby. I'm not going to put my music in a game that I'm working on because, well, maybe I would. I don't know. But it's like you could also pay a specialist that's their whole life. It's a great question, though. It's good to learn about, you know, what people's choices are. Maybe if that's something that excites you, then Foley is a good route. That is like a super fun job. That's like the fun stuff. It's like candy. It's like when
like
you get
candy.
to go record stuff, it's really fun. I'm not very good at it, but I don't care. I still like to do it.
So we really kind of like diverted away from your question, Nick. But I kind of wanted to bring it back a little bit because we started getting into like, oh, like, you know, your specialization, like you do this, you do that. And I have a really interesting kind of dynamic going on at Wabi because we are just like five people doing audio for like different games. And like for us, we're very kind of like blanketed on everything. So like we'll do a little bit of music for whatever games. We'll do like commercial library, like editing stuff. We'll do some like system, like making like some tools here and there. And I don't know, it's just kind of interesting to hear like you guys say that like, oh yeah, you should be like specialists. And then I'm over here, I'm kind of like, well, like one day I was doing Foley, and the next day I was cutting a bunch of sounds from a library. We're working on a game right now where we're not allowed to use any sort of commercial libraries. So it's like you got to do a lot of like weird guerrilla stuff, and then like that's how I know some of the microphones. And it's like so it's either, you know, go at your own pace if you really want to do all that stuff, or like I've only really been in the industry for like 2.5 years, so I'm still kind of like, you know, placing all my little feelers out there and just kind of seeing like, you know, what really works for me, what doesn't work for me, if I like doing Foley all the time, or maybe if I like doing music. I don't really like doing music, but a lot of implementation stuff. And, you know, it's just like after a certain while, you really just fall into what you want to do, and it's kind of important not to like get out of that.
I agree. I think that it's important to specialize early so that you can get in. Because when I started, I was trying to be a composer, but then one day I woke up and I'm like, I'm really bad at this, you know? And that's just the truth. I'm not a composer. I do electronic music, and that's not what a lot of games want. So for years I tried that route, but my success came when I was like, music is my own thing, and I'll be a sound designer. And so I really enjoyed sound design anyway, and preferred it. And by specializing as a sound designer, I was able to do music later for games, even though I don't love to do it now. But yeah, my career is definitely spread as far as what I do currently.
No, I think you make a really good point too. It's like there's a million different paths, and you know, sometimes like having a Swiss Army knife kind of person that has experience in a lot of stuff. Actually, you know, Valve had that one saying for a while that was the T-shaped professional or whatever. So it's like lots of really broad experience and then one really deep specialization.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to consider too on this panel is it's actually a really interesting panel because we're all doing kind of different stuff. You know, it's like it's a range of in-house to kind of like support crew and then like field recording. I mean, it's all sorts of people up here, and so it really depends on where you want to work. So if you wanna be in-house sound design, there is a certain probably set of things that you would want to learn. If you want to be in a crew that works on lots of different games and is kind of like a dedicated audio house, then that's a different kind of stuff that you want to learn. But all ways are valid.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so
Favorite mic?
in conclusion,
So the Sennheiser 8060.
What moderating this thing?
What kind of mic was your Desert Islet mic? Always in your resume with "I know Excel." What?
it is like one of the most important skills you use.
It really is, and especially in house.
I know I can write concise emails.
Yeah, right. I'm good at MS Paint.
Effective way to break into game composition as a composer. Like I know, like in television, film, you know, you work with composers, assistant, you know, there's kind of this engineering. And is there something similar to that in
I might not have the best stuff for like composers, but I know firsthand that like just in general, a good way to get in is to be basically doing what you're doing right now, is going to all these events and just like meeting people and connecting with them, forming relationships. Because to me, the most important thing about a person is if they're just cool, like if they're chill to hang out with, even if they have like subpar chops for things, you can work on that. You can't and you don't and you shouldn't want to change their personality. So just like by forming a bunch of relationships and then just like following up on them, keep going to a bunch of events like this, keep your friends. Like I'll have GDC friends that I see like every year, and we always like kind of keep in touch throughout the year, and then whenever it comes time for us to go to GDC, it's like everyone's back. What have you been up to? What have you been up to? You moved? Like, oh, I'm about to like do something. You guys have like openings. I don't know if it's too much different for like composers, but I feel like that's kind of just a universal what you should do kind of thing.
Also have a sound that's yours, because it's everybody can buy libraries and like compose, but like if you have a unique spin that can't really be copied, that's your thing. It's essentially like music composition for games is like being like a rock star for hire, kind of. You have to, like, the guys that get booked all the time are the guys that have like a real specific thing that they do, like, and I think that's key. Like, be cool and have a sound. Yeah, that's good.
I would work on a small project. There are always small groups working on a project. Work on something that's just fun to play, so that you could show somebody later on, hey, check out this game I worked on. And if it's fun, with the music, add a bonus. So then you could show them, and then, like they said, when you network, your friends know what you did, and they'll tell you. I remember a while ago, the Need for Speed team was coming down to record race cars, and he pinged me and said, hey, it's your neighborhood, contact these guys. And I didn't see it, but he pointed it out, so then I saw it and initiated contact. So when people speak for you, it's great. It's a cool guy. No, it really is.
We love him.
No matter what people say about him.
I don't care what anyone says. He's pretty decent.
I'm not answering now. That pretty much sums it up. I go to these things not to like listen to the panels, but I go to them to make friends enough to where they will invite me to their wedding.
Totally.
Those people are the people that when they have a game, they're going to say, oh yeah, I need a composer. Who am I going to call? My best man or one of the 500 other composers that just sent me a demo. So it seems really slimy. And the reason why I never went to LA was because I didn't like the persona of like, oh, I got to network and be this douche. And so like, I handled
because everyone in LA is just all of them. Every them.
Every one of them. So, but I didn't want to do that. But really the name of the game is relationships. And if you approach it like authentically, like I'm not meeting these people to get jobs. I'm meeting these people because I want to have a cool life with them. We can hang and we tell the same jokes and we find each other funny and just want to be with each other. Those are the people that are going to work with you. So you got to find. That's why Williams and Spielberg work together. It's because they have this relationship. And it's like Spielberg, like every now and then might think of somebody else, but he's going to like go to Johnny first because they talk like this, So
Totally.
find those people. There's probably 10 of them showing games right now that you could be talking to.
Actually, on that note, I would also add, like, if you are trying to break into game music, like, don't turn a project down. And then every project that you work on, you really got to pour your heart into it. I was talking to someone else here recently. It's like I watched this talk by this dude who worked with Jim Henson, and he was trying to say, like, when you're working like ads or something like that, it can be really really gnarly, you know. And it's hard to be invested in that sort of thing, but you got to ask yourself, like, if you're working on a toilet paper commercial, it's got to be the best toilet paper commercial that's ever been
Totally.
made. And the thing that's cool about little games or indie games or whatever is that they're really willing to take interesting risks. Whereas like AAA is very risk averse. They just want to, they're like, you know, there's like these big corporate boardrooms going like, we have to do the thing that everyone's doing, you know. But if you work on indie games, then that's a great way to find your sound and kind of push it a little further, because if you can get something that's really unique, like, and take a risk and do something different, then you'll stick out. But I can't emphasize enough the whole, like, just make friends bit, because at the end of the day, and it has to be real. And see, it's kind of hard, and some people struggle to make friends. And so, you know, trying to be vulnerable and be honest and like tell a little something about yourself and like just and play the really long-term approach where it's like, you know, work really hard, practice what you're doing, but then meanwhile, like, genuinely make friends and don't think that it's going to take, that you're going to make a friend in a day. It's going to take a year, but then it pays off. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're going to have more than you can do because people like you and they want to work with you.
Yeah.
And also the same thing earlier, keep your demo short. Keep your demo, and hit it right at the beginning. Like, the cool thing needs to be right there, because otherwise we're going to skip around and you don't know if we're going to skip to the part you want us to skip to. So keep it up front, I think.
Like you said, don't turn anything down, so I need all cooking games.
Yes.
Yeah, so now you're
Yes.
kicking games to him.
Are you kidding? There's so much room for cool music in cooking games.
Yeah,
Like,
it's true.
you just
That's
just
some of my
doing
favorite
cook
stuff I've
game.
done. It was just
I
a
was
weird
trying to
game.
do rock tracks on the DS. There's one person that can do that.
Ian Stalker.
His name's
Ian.
Yeah.
Ian's awesome.
Okay, so we got Charlie, and then we'll get to you, Charles.
Which non-audio department do you mesh the best with?
VFX.
Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
fun.
Probably.
Yeah, I like that. Me personally,
I'm gonna
go
go with like the friendship thing again. I don't think that there's a department I'm mesh with. There's people at the companies that I mesh with. And what's nice about that, I would say if I were sound designer, I would find a programmer to become his best friend.
Oh,
Yeah, you have to do that.
No
because
doubt about
They're
it.
gonna.
It's
go
all
to bat
under the
for you.
table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, come to my talk tomorrow. That's what it's all about, basically. But yeah, I think I would mesh. I mesh best with like programmers because I really enjoy just like the mindset of programming. I'm not great at it. I'm not really good at it actually, but I enjoy, you know, talking with like the engineers and the programmers and like coming up with different things and being like, oh, what if we did this? And they'd be like, no, we can't do that. And I'd be like, well, what if we did this? And they're like, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I get along with all of the team, but I would say VFX is like from a
So
professional
similar.
standpoint is like in the same pipeline positioning. You know, but there's yes, of course you need a good programmer, and you know you also need to be friends with the QA guy, even if they wear boots and shorts together. Just kidding.
Sounds like a personal.
He's a very
experience.
specific guy, great guy, but like he'd wear these high boots and like really short shorts. Like, and I'm not talking like kind of booty shorts too. Like it was really interesting look.
Is this an Austin person?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keeping it weird.
All right, Matt.
I say I would if like it's like what Rickwood says. It's kind of like whoever wants to be friends. That's always kind of first. But then if I'm trying to like strategically build relationships, I would say it's either people that I'm dependent on. So like there's always problems between animation and audio. There's always problems between design and audio because they're not telling you something and then makes your life hard. And so like the best way, the only time I've ever made the animation audio thing work well, because they nudge a little thing and all of a sudden your timing's off and you get the,
Oh,
you know. And so the only way I've ever been able to make that work well is by making genuine friends
Yeah.
with them. Because if they genuinely care about you, they'll tell you the thing that they'll let you know. And then strategically, again, the other thing I would say would be like leaders and influencers,
Totally.
people. Because what happens in audio is that you don't matter. What you need, what you're saying you need doesn't matter as much as when like a designer or an artist is going to someone saying like, don't worry about my stuff, work on theirs. Because if you can do that, that's how you get code, you know, and stuff. It's like coders, they're being pulled a million directions, and the only way you can usually get their time is if you can have the other people who they're doing work for say, no, the audios thing is more important. All of a sudden, you got your codes.
If you can hang out with the studio owners, like that's
Yeah,
another
that's
one.
huge.
It's like if you can swing that and genuinely become friends with them, like that's a game changer because they'll just hire you for every project. You know, yeah.
I agree with that. The president, the CEO, I've gotten jobs without bidding.
Yeah,
Mhm.
totally.
He said, "Hey, text me a message. Text me. We want you to work on this." Okay.
That's really good experience
awesome.
too.
Yeah.
Like you learn a ton from like business leaders and stuff,
Sure.
and directors and stuff like that. Because, like for me, I'm like super verbose, right? But then when I have to talk to like executive types, I have to learn how do I say? And what ends up happening is I front load it all. So I'm like working for like 3 hours to write like a 10-word email. Because I'm like, how do I convey this in like 10 words? I'm just gonna keep talking right now so that I can really emphasize that point. Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry. Were you done?
No, I was good.
Or one behind you? Yeah, you had a question.
Yeah, I got a question. For the composers, what kind of musical software do you guys use?
All of it.
All of them? There's a specific one that you use?
I
Right now.
literally use all of them. Like I use Logic sometimes, I use Ableton sometimes, I use Cubase. I just started using Cubase because there's some cool things there now. Reverb for sound design. I have pretty much every commercial sample library that I can afford. And like I'm literally all competing with Hans Zimmer.
Certain projects that you use it for?
Well, I will say, I didn't just go into credit card debt immediately and to buy all this stuff. It was, I've been in it for like 15 years, so it's been a gradual I got to do a lumberjack game, guitar time, So it's you buy it as you need it. So if you get hired to do a lumberjack game, figure out what you need for that, and then buy those libraries and buy those instruments and build up your studio that way instead of getting caught up in. Honestly, we shouldn't even be buying sample libraries if I could go back in time and just say, we should just always record this live. And there's people that really push that, but that's not the reality of most people. So take your time and figure out what project you're working on, or even what you love to do. So if you love electronic minimal techno, you don't need the Spitfire orchestral libraries. There's no reason
Yeah.
for it. So figure out what you love to do and then what you need to do for the projects that you're working on.
Yeah, it's not about what you want to own. It's how you use what you have. And you want to be very quick at exporting WAV files, making changes. And the biggest thing about writing music for games is that you'll say, I don't like how this ends. I want you to do a different cadence. You can't do that's my baby. You can't do that. No, and that's why I don't like writing music for games, because it's mine. I write it for the record company, things like that, commercial. So you got to be able to take instructions and change right away and export that WAV file, compress it, whatever you want, but do it quickly, all right, and be okay about that. I wasn't okay with it, but seriously, so I don't want to do that, right? So I'll stick to sound design, field recording. You want me to hit the hammer at different times? I'll do it, no problem. All right. So be willing to do that and do it quickly. That's it.
I'll tell you something really quick. Is that when I started my career, I was a composer, and the way that I got my first job was I learned this really super obscure DOS program, composing program. It was free. It's called a tracker, and it made really tiny file sizes. And as a result of that, there was a company that needed really tiny file sizes for their music. So another thing to think about maybe is just look for something where there's a niche, and it's if there's some kind of software that can do something in a certain way that's a little different than others, like maybe some kind of procedural software or something like that. That's another way that maybe you could set yourself apart.
It's a good idea. Take Wise and create a soundtrack, like an album, using the built-in synth, or even your own sample library, a trigger with MIDI, so that you can send it to Ariel and say, hey, check out my album that's interactive. Boom, and it's
That would be
all
super
done
cool.
in Wise.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
You should do that.
I kind of need to do
That's cool. I want to.
Dude,
I
forget I
want
said
to
that.
I want to know
Nobody
that.
That's really funny because that's how I got hired at Wabi. Was I did some bunch of stuff in Pure Data
Oh, cool.
randomly, and I kind of applied for a job at Wabi for like a mid-level implementer, and I was just like, oh hey, like I'm really interested in middleware, like in implementing and like maybe like some audio programming, kind of new to this, and just wanted to say what's up. And then my boss Andrew Lackey was like checking out, like he was Googling my name and then saw like a bunch of things that I did for Pure Data, and then he was just like, hey, you want to come on out? And I just threw up a little bit, and then went out of Austin and went to to Atlanta.
You had a question.
Yeah. Has there ever been an experience where you worked on a project you were not very passionate about? And if so, what do you do to stay creative during that process?
So, yes. And I've held to it for about 2.5 years. But I worked on this game that was like just gratuitous violence. Like I'd have to go to meetings, and they would be like, "Hey, so we need the sound guy to be in the meetings about arms falling off and like how that's gonna sound, and like the physics, the ragdolling, all this stuff." And there's blood everywhere, and so I made kind of a pact at that point. I'm like, after this is done, I'm not gonna work on a project that's like human on human violence. Cartoon violence is okay, but like. So I actually stayed to that, because in Prey you just kill a bunch of aliens. And fuck aliens. Anyway. So there's always moments, it's like when you work on something long term, no matter how cool it is, there's moments of darkness where you're just like over it, and like you're not creatively jazzed, and you're tired of the content, you're tired of the direction. I mean, politics in the studio can play a role. And so for me, the way I combat that is like use the middle of the day when you're like at your worst. That's when you should go to the gym. That's when you should get out of the office. Because everybody tries to they're like, okay, it's so like a perfect day. I wake up, I like do like 500 push-ups, I get a sick meditation on, and then I make some coffee and I go to work. And so for me, I meditate while commuting. Just keep my eyes closed and just hope I make it. So I actually think like walks are really important. Going to the gym is huge, or like doing yoga or something like that, I would say is like a big thing that's big for me. The other thing that goes directly into the audio side of this is I started using Ableton because I could switch workflows so quickly within the program itself. And then in addition to that, I bought this, I was talking about it, so it's a thing called Organelle, and it's like a Pure Data box. And so you can, so like a lot of my process now is using things like I bought a thing called the Octatrack. And the Octatrack is like a hardware sampler that has some crazy mangling effects. It's like, it's not intended for sound design at all, but I like to use things intended for music to make sounds. So I bought a bunch of guitar pedals. Like I have this crazy DJ mixer that's all analog and has drive, and like, so I just have this crazy setup to where I can leave, the computer and totally change my workflow. So I have all these keyboards and little weird sound boxes and things like that, that whenever a project gets me down, I'm just like, okay, so I have this task and I'm going to use this thing, this say set of sounds or a scenario, and I'm going to teach myself how to make sound effects on the Octatrack, for example, or program a patch for PD for the Organelle, and like use those things as like little challenges to step outside of the project itself, so you can remain relevant as an artist and collaborator on the project itself.
So
Really
you
good.
took kind of my answer, but I'll add to it a little bit. One is I delegate. So there's projects I don't like. And you can think, I think of it as delegating because I have a team, but you can think of it as like, oh, I have a bunch of friends and they're composers. If I don't like this job, why not recommend that? And I actually do that with commercials. Like I don't want to do commercials, and Atlanta's full of commercial composers. So it's like, oh, here, yeah, don't call me, call this guy. Number two, Jack White has this thing where he's in concerts where he'll have to play like a part of here and sing, and then run over across the stage and play the piano. And for each concert, he would slowly push the piano a little further back. So like it's a challenge for him. He's still playing the same song again that night, but this time it's like, oh, it's another foot away. How do I do that? So he's kind of what Matt does. He challenges himself in a different way. Scott Adams talks about the Dilbert cartoonist about instead of thinking of a job of like, oh, you're creating this thing, it's like you're actually creating a system that you can learn from. So take that job that you're not excited about, kind of what Matt's doing is saying, oh, I'm not focused on like, I don't really like working on this cooking game because I'm not passionate about it. But I am passionate about learning how to implement better. Or maybe I'm going to learn how to code Unreal Blueprint with this game. So I'm going to dig into it. So find a different challenge that you get out of the project that will reignite that like excitement. Where it's like, oh, I'm not passionate about making the sounds, but now I'm passionate about mixing the sounds together. Like, let me focus on that. And that'll get your brain thinking a little different. I would do things like, in Smite, we've done like 300 characters now. So it's like, I cannot make another whooshy ice sound. So I got kind of burnt out. So I would say, okay, this time I would do the Jack White thing, and like, I'll do it in a day, all the sounds. And then the next one would be like, I'm going to see if I can do it in 4 hours. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to see if I can do it in real time. Like, play the video, make the sound for it.
Yeah, totally.
Never good at, I never did that, but that was the challenge I made. It was like, can I get to the point where I'm just playing the sound?
You're still working on it.
You would be a force.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
Eventually, you do the sound before you make it.
Yeah. It's like, oh,
I've
read
made
that
the
you were
sound.
going to do.
Oh, it's another Batman movie? Bam.
All done.
Yeah.
It's mixed.
Seems perfectly.
Yeah, totally. Time is money. Time is money.
I want to add too that like that's why we get paid. You know, it's like if we didn't have to slog through so much crap that we didn't want to do, like we wouldn't. I mean, that's just part of the job.
Yeah.
You know, and so in those cases, I tend to fall back on just technique. So it's like when I'm like, I don't know, I'm like, I'm not excited about this thing. I don't really even know what to do for it. And it's kind of like, who cares about this? I don't care about the sound or whatever.
Right.
I'll just go back to my techniques. I'm like, well, what I do, I just go through the motions. I'm like, well, I'm going to search for this and I'm going to put this together. And then eventually, you know what? Actually, I tend to find that I do find something I like about it. And then I just hone in on that bit.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing too, which is that Twitter has an account called Game Audio Strategies, which is like this, they're like really oblique ways of solving problems. So I actually have used that. And so like I'll look at it as like an experiment. So I'll be like, it'll pop up Game Audio Strategies, and it'll be something like, you know, take a walk. Yeah.
Is it basically the Brian Eno thing?
It is the Brian Eno thing. Yeah, it's
cool.
like ripping off that.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna follow that.
and there's some interesting, really strange things to do. And if you try it, it'll be like mute half your tracks at random, and you're like, oh, actually that's kind of interesting, you know. And then you find a new way to kind of do something.
You should come to my talk tomorrow because I do all the stuff he's talking about.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to show some of the stuff.
Cool.
How to keep creative.
Ooh, these questions. You.
So hypothetically, you're an audio leader director, and you catch an application for an internship from what seems like a promising, pretty solid applicant. Is that flexible at all, or does that just kind of get pushed into the maybe later pile?
What do you mean?
As far as actually being able to pursue interviewing that applicant or hiring them for even just like an internship.
You mean if we don't have the posting?
Yeah, if there was no posting.
Oh, I don't know.
I think anything's possible. That's been my experience. Is like, it's like all the studios will say like, we will always hire the best candidates even if we don't have a job, but they don't. But like with something like an internship, I think that comes back to the other thing where it's like anything really is kind of possible, and if you have made a really strong impression on someone through whatever you're putting forward, and you got people inside the studio that are fighting for you to join, I mean, it's always kind of possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because that's like getting into kind of the money bit too, where it's like, we only have a certain amount of money to spend, big giant quotes around that. And it's really more like, how do you justify spending the money? And so, I mean, it's like, there's always money to be moved around. And when you're talking about like a big game where it's like $1 million plus, or whatever, I mean, there's always a way to scrounge up the cash to pay for someone.
Totally.
It really just matters is if it's not posted, you really need to shine really super bright.
What if it was an unpaid internship?
What about it?
Those get weird because you have to provide. I think there's kind of some rules about that.
Okay.
Like if you're coming unpaid, I think you have to we have to be providing some educational value, and then it's like actually more expensive because of time.
The unpaid intern thing scares me. I'd never accept it because I know that I wouldn't want to be in that position of being unpaid. And I wouldn't want to put anybody else in that position, and I think it's bad for you. Theoretically you. It's bad for the intern because like they're having to essentially pay to work, right? Mm-hmm. And you can only ask so much of that person, so you're not going to put them through like the ringer like you would someone you would pay. And if you want something, pay for it.
It's actually illegal, like to have unpaid interns that work on stuff that you deliver as a value. If it's unpaid, it's literally a person sitting in the office just watching what you're doing and getting that education.
Yes, you had a question for a minute.
What is an audio mistake that you've made?
Oh.
And what?
Yeah, it's like the list goes on.
Okay, the first one that popped in my mind, I put reverbs on I baked in reverbs on the voices for Smite, and it haunts me to this day.
Yep.
Like, don't ever put reverbs on your voices that are going to the game. Let the engine do the reverbs.
Even just a little? Even just a
Sometimes
little?
Sometimes I do a little.
I like just a little
You're nice.
sometimes.
You're forever processing those files forever and ever.
Smite, yeah.
Never?
Something that ends up in a box, though, maybe is not as bad.
But these were godlike reverbs.
Oh, okay.
5 second.
Yeah, why'd you do that, Chris?
They wanted huge voices that were godlike. I was like, we had one voice at the time. It's like
Overlayering was mine. That's my biggest audio mistake. I just overlayer, and like the longer that I've been a sound designer, the more that I'm confident about the few choices that I make, and don't have to don't feel the need to sort of cover up what's good, even if it's kind of like a sound that's like recognizable or something. I don't care as much anymore. It's not deep art; it's shallow art. So, yeah. Shart.
Well, that's another thing.
That's not in use. Let's go with that.
For me, I would have to say the thing that I hate about myself sometimes is not. Yeah, it's true though. It's like taking a foundation that basically I've been designing the sound for a game for, and it's kind of like rocky, and I'm not really in love with it, and not just completely removing it. Keep building up on it, because I had an experience with a game where I was making all these sounds and I was kind of oh, this is fine, and then I kept adding to it, and I was yeah, this is all right, yeah, this is fine. And then when it came time for being oh, we're gonna be shipping it soon, I was I wanna take all of that out and restart to re-spark my creativity, but I wouldn't have the pleasure of having the time to do that. So yeah, you gotta sometimes you just gotta take the time and say this is going to take a while for me to rebuild something, and then just do it. And even now I'm very aware of it that I'm really bad at taking my time to rehash something out, but yeah, sometimes it just scares me to be I can't redo this system because it's been in there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Totally.
Mine, I would say, is kind of like siloing myself and not communicating. Like what I end up doing is I think like no one cares, no one really wants to know about this thing that that I'm working on or whatever, and then it just is like this avalanche of problems that come from that. So like now I over communicate. I'm always saying like, here's what I'm working on and here's what we're doing and is this all sound good? And then I'm constantly trying to communicate. You gotta put like, I think it was Randy Tom or someone that said like it's like a third communication, a third implementation, and a third creative or something like that.
Please say frustration.
And frustration, perspiration.
Let's go with that one.
Anyways, yeah, not communicating was a problem for me, but I don't do that anymore.
I wish I'd specialized earlier, and not procrastinate. I just if you think about it, just do it. Don't. It's like Nike, just do it.
Or Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
Just eat people.
There are plenty of mistakes, but that's one.
Is there time for any other questions?
Oh, since we started that, we could take one more.
Okay.
You had the question.
Yeah. I was
Sorry.
wondering if you guys had a personal set of rules that you follow, whether it's for composing, editing, or interacting with people.
I'll hit that real quick, which is it's you have to like sort out what your values are. You got to know who you are. Like honestly, that's another mistake I made. It's like don't take the time to figure out like what matters to you, and then have like some kind of core inside that you're just not willing. It's like this has to be this. And so for me, it's things like treating people kindly, and things like that. And there's certain things that I just, as part of who I am, that when I start feeling like I'm going off and I'm doing something that's kind of not aligned with who I am deep down, I always go back to that like little unpierceable bit at the bottom of who I am. That's like, this is who I am, and I'm not going to sacrifice that bit. Same thing with like family. It's like that's a rule for me. It's like I got to have dinner with my kids, and if I don't, then I need to like reevaluate what the hell's going on in my life. So.
Yeah.
I think I tend to like go by a rule. It's really simple, but it's just sometimes people have better ideas than I do, and it's a really easy one, but it's true. Like sometimes my approach and the way that I want to handle things is not the best way to do it, and by following that simple rule, you can at least open your mind to where other people are coming from and why they might want a revision on a sound or a new system built or something like that. So that's that.
That's good.
I'm still trying to think of mine.
Well, just
These guys are lawless.
One of my
Yeah.
One of my mantras is, you guys can probably tell more, but one is fail hard, fail quick.
Yeah, totally.
Get it, like real time sound design. Get it out there, and that'll trigger other ideas. So creatively, that's what I try to do. Just as soon as I can, get something and deliver it. It kind of goes with the communication thing. If you're sitting on something that you're blocked on, and you're not communicating that with the developer, it can go weeks, and you're like, where's this music, which I've been sitting on for 3 months now. Just get something to them so they can have that conversation of like, okay, this is important.